Israel has violently dispossessed land from the Palestinians. I've shown this map before, but you can see that at this point, these are open air ghettos, reservations, with the fascist state Israel, and this is not my words, they call themselves a Jewish state. And by definition, it's almost an apartheid state, or it's an apartheid state. And if you look at this, you have the West Bank and you have the smattering of areas that is Gaza. And the question becomes, how on earth, what's the end goal here? What's the end goal? What's the goal? What's the objective here? And the point that I tried to make in my last video was that Israel is going with an American model of things in a way that we did the Native Americans. And within the context of that, we committed genocide. Now, if you want to call it genocide, if you want to call it ethnic cleansing, by definition, it's ethnic cleansing. They have been killing, forcibly removing, imprisoning various people who push back on this plan of doing so, as if Palestinians don't have a right to defend themselves and under the Israeli law. They don't. This has been taking place for decades. And in the context of that dispossession of land, well, what do you think the public will feel? What do you think that you as an individual will feel being ripped out of your homes, having somebody stand there in the middle of the night grabbing you from your homes, bulldozing that particular house, or having other people who are either right-wingers, settlers, come and take your property and start living in your property, looking at you out of your windows? No care in the world as to where you're going to go. Yeah, I can imagine there's rage there, this level of apoplectic pain, indelible. I don't necessarily know how to even grasp that. I often grasp it in the context of African Americans and what blacks went through, but it's really more specific to what Native Americans went through. What's the end game? What's the end result? If it's not going to be a two-state solution, you're not going to allow one man, one vote because under their model it destroys Israel. What's the end game? And I suspect strongly that the end game is similar to what was taking place with Native Americans. Now, the point that I'm making this video is because Andrew Yang put out a tweet basically giving full approval to Israel in this situation. Right here. I'm standing with the people of Israel are coming under bombardment of attacks and condemn Hamas terrorists. The people of New York City will always stand with our brothers and sisters in Israel who face down terrorism and preserve. Again, these guys have nuclear weapons. And not just have nuclear weapons, getting billions of dollars from the United States, getting weapons from the United States, getting political cover from the United States for all of the the resolutions that came down basically condemning Israel as a rogue state, open air, ghetto. They basically use air power to attack civilian targets, murdering 22 people, killing children in the process. Now they could say, oh, this was Hamas. But fact of the matter is, when the people elected Hamas, how do you tell and disassociate one from the other? And in the sense of the collective punishment that is often meted down, these things are war crimes. But Israel gets cover. The United States basically prevents anything from coming down the pike that hits Israel. And with these phony peace negotiations, it allows them political cover to expropriate and steal even more and more land. For Andrew Yang to put out this, but a dumbass tweet like this. These guys were in a mosque praying, one of the third holiest sites. The cops, Israel right-wingers, go raiding the place with stun grenades, firing rounds of pellet bullets and whatnot. And this gets to the point of a response from Hamas. Now understand, even if Hamas started off with rockets fire immediately after they tried to steal that neighborhood and tried to organize that neighborhood for exculpation, basically stealing the property from the neighborhood. they would have been correct morally, maybe not tactically, but you can understand their rage. And in the context of that rage, you can understand this need, this want, this screaming for reaction and response in retaliation. Meaning this theft of land in and of itself could be enough to trigger a larger global, a larger conflict or a larger war. But these guys aren't warring factions. These Palestine, these bottle rockets that these guys are firing, and they're stronger than bottle rockets. I'm undermining them, but they're not the heavy artillery and the military firepower that Israel has. And maybe the media needs to stop pretending as if that there's some kind of equality here. There's not. One side decimates the other side when it does these incursions, 2,000, 3,000. The last time I remember, they were dropping bombs on people's houses to notify them that a larger bomb was coming. This is the stuff that I'm pointing to here. This is not two equal sides. This is one side that is being deprived of its very existence, with the other side screaming to high heaven that it's constantly under attack. Andrew Yang should be ashamed of himself for putting this tweet out. You have babies that died in this war or in this attack. And I'm unclear on how it's the fault of the people who are defending their land any more than France was defending itself from the Nazis in regards to the partisans. Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang was full of shit during the campaign, and I pointed out over and over again that Andrew Yang was full of shit, especially when it came down to the notion of Medicare for all. If a man will look you in the eye and say, I support Medicare for all, and then will say, well, my Medicare for all plan is not a public option. Is not a government-run program. He's like, what? What are you talking about? And the person just basically stole the language in order to confuse the population. That should give you some clue as to the individual that you are dealing with. And in Yang's case, slimy, yes. And whether he's taken this position for the benefit of, let's say, the people who are in New York who he think this will satisfy, or whether he's taken this position because he means it. The reality of it is, 22 people lost their lives today, many of which were children. And all of this directly related to the theft and the continued theft of land. Andrew Yang should be ashamed of himself. And fortunately, there was a New Yorker that just so happened wanted to give Andrew Yang a piece of her mind for that tweet. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. This content is brought to you by you, and I thank you for allowing me to do it. So I haven't watched this video, but I saw she got some serious body language going on here. And I don't know if she's Asian or Hispanic. I think she's Asian. And I don't know why that makes it any different, but it's almost like, feels like they're one-to-one. I know this sounds strange and slightly racist, but I think you get my point. Let's watch though. Let's see what she has to say.
To that, what do you have to say about your tweet directly to New Yorkers right now?
It's heartbreaking. All of this is happening in the Middle East. It's heartbreaking, right? It is. You know, people are dying. Civilians are dying. Do you condemn Israel for that? Do you condemn Israel for their unjust acts against the innocent Palestinians? Sir, I'm talking to him.
We got the publicist over here.
I'm talking to him.
We gotta go. Don't say anything that's gonna fuck up your campaign. And that's why you don't have my vote, and I guarantee you, you don't have the vote
Sir, I have just one question.
To that, what do you have to say about your tweet?
They clearly had feelings about that tweet. And it's hard to hear what Yang is saying here. I can't really hear what Yang is saying here. If I'm not mistaken, but he's saying basically he's not backing away. Right here. He calls the conflict in the Middle East heartbreaking, but doesn't condemn Israeli airstrikes. Now she's like, well, you still have my vote after that. Don't say anything to screw up your campaign. Meaning she recognizes that that tweet is fucked up, despite the fact that she's still giving them the vote. I suppose that goes to the competition who's in New York in regards to what they think they can vote for. Yes, it's heartbreaking. But your tweet is very clear in regards to who you are declaring fault. Don't take my word for it. Terrorists is very specific. Terrorists is very specific. I'm unclear on terrorists being used in the way that people will use, let's say, a mother baking cookies. It's not a positive attribute. It's built in negative. So if, oh, it's heartbreaking. Yeah, it's heartbreaking, but it's heartbreaking in a way that you're looking at one side as being basically terrorists and the other side is being what? I suppose the non-terrorists? I hate to tell you this, but the theft of land is terror. The throwing people in prison when they complain about it is terror. The lawlessness that takes place in regards towards the Palestinians is literally terror. And it puts me in mind of the fascist reign that whites had over blacks in America. And I would imagine there was somebody like Yang who was sitting around saying, well, those blacks need to stop being aggressive and angry in this situation. That's who Yang is. That's the person that Yang is. And that's who Yang, I suppose, always was. But in this very specific case, Yang is showing us who he is. And, you know, whether you say it's going to fuck up his campaign, it should fuck up his campaign. Somebody with a jaded point of view like that, looking at what is basically killing of babies, and they come away with, yeah, I can't condemn the airstrikes. Airstrikes on civilians. Can't condemn it. Or bottle rockets. Can't condemn it. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks all.